last week, I told you we're going to talk about the enemy's mouth, which we did. A little message called Catch It by the Jaw. And today we're going to talk about your mouth. Did you know that your tongue is unique like a fingerprint? Nobody has your tongue. Your tongue prints are like no one else's. Your tongue is one of the most strong muscles in your body relative to its size. In fact, that little tongue in there has great strength. It's made up of 8 muscles. Did y'all know that? 8 muscles. Your tongue has a self-cleaning system. It gets all the bacteria out just naturally. It sheds the cells in there and secretes saliva to help rinse away all the infection and the bacteria for a fast recovery. Your tongue is a sensory powerhouse. Your tongue has over 8,000 taste buds in it. And they have the senses to taste all different types of sensations. They process not only the taste, but they process texture and temperature and also pain. But the most crucial function of the tongue is that it is critical for what I'm doing right now, for speech, to have conversation. It shapes sounds by controlling those 8 muscles, controlling airflow and positioning itself and working in conjunction with the jaw. And I want to kind of start off the way I started off last week, where I told you your tongue is in your mouth. Your mouth has your jaw. Your jaw is connected to your mind. And your mind is connected to your heart. Without any of this apparatus, you would not be able to really communicate audibly, effectively. Psychiatrist Luann Brizendine states in the female brain that men use about 7,000 words per day. And women use about 20,000 words per day. Now, when I read that, the first thing that occurred to me was that I hope she didn't spend a lot of money in her research, the research that I could have given her for free. That's probably why God, decided to create man first. He figured he didn't need a lot of advice. But we have this incredible muscle. I didn't lose half of you, did I? I was just teasing. But we have this incredible muscle located in our mouth. They say your tongue is as strong as your bicep. Wow. Your mouth is in this whole region, close to your mind. I think that's sometimes why it's hard to let your mind filter out what you just say, because sometimes it's easy to bypass this and you say something. And you know how you wish when you put it out in the ether you could unsend a message real quick? Well, you can't do that, because once it's there, it's out there, you can't take it in. What comes out, it never goes back in. So wherever I end up on today's subject, because I'm talking about the tongue, the mouth, the jaw, I want to preface this by saying, look, there is no drama in the church that I know of that I'm trying to call out or anything. I'm just trying to bring more recognition about the power of the jaw. Everybody say the power of the jaw. I want to start at James chapter 3, and I'm going to read a good amount of scripture for my opening text. So please just stay with me. I'll try to keep it as interesting as possible. But if you follow me today, I guarantee you will be blessed. God has laid something on all of our hearts today. So James chapter 3 verse 1, Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect. And we could also control ourselves in every other way. I do want to go back. Yes, we all do make mistakes. But a lot of times we have this two-tier justice system where we judge others by their actions, but we only judge ourselves by our intentions. And so this type of ideology, it helps us not be accountable for ourselves. But we all make mistakes, all of us, even you. Look to your neighbor and say, even you do. And we can make a large horse go wherever we want it by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even when the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue, it's small. It's a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness. My goodness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire. Some of y'all know somebody that set the whole life on fire because maybe ourselves, we remember we're on fire when we said what we said. For the tongue is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one, everybody say no one, can tame the tongue. It's restless and evil and full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises the Lord our Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. How many times have you ever cursed them while you were praying for them? Oh, Lord, you know you said all liars should have their place in the lake of fire. God, you know who I'm talking about. Yes, oh, Richard. Yeah, if you didn't know, that no good stinking out. God, but go ahead, if you want to bless him anyway, go ahead, Lord. I'm just reminding you what he did to me. And so blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. They come pouring out, and surely, James says, this is not right. Does a spring bubble up water that's both fresh and bitter? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No, you can't draw fresh water from a salty springs. Now, James is stating a law of nature that is constrained to follow order and process. That is that a fruit tree cannot produce two kinds of fruit, or a spring cannot both produce fresh water and bitter water. Should be an indicator that we as born-again Christians cannot speak faith-filled words in one moment and cursings the next moment. Surely this is unlawful. It is not right. How many of you feel speaking blessing to your neighbor on a Sunday, but then on Monday you're feeding yourself all the negative words yourself? And I should be telling myself the advice I gave them. And out of the mouth came blessing and cursing. I'll bless them and I'll curse them. Life and death really are in the power of the tongue. Genesis chapter 40, my next opening text, is a story of Joseph who has been rejected. He's been sold to Egypt, and he was caught in a lie and manipulated. And even though in his innocence he was thrown into a prison, and in that prison 2 of Potiphar's servants came in, and we pick it up in verse 5 where it says this: while they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and the baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. And when Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. "Why do you look so worried today?" And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." And Joseph said, "Interpreting dreams is God's business. Go ahead and tell me your dreams." And so the chief cupbearer started in on his dream first. He said, "In my dream, I saw a grapevine in front of me, and I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand," because he was a cupbearer. "And so he took the cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup, and I placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Joseph said, "This is what the dream means. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor. When things go well for you, please remember me when it goes well for you, and mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. I was kidnapped. I was put here undeservingly." Verse 16 says, "So the chief baker saw that Joseph had given the first dream a very positive interpretation. And he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastry stacked on my head. And the top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh. The birds came, though, and ate them from the basket on my head." Just like that, Joseph said, "I'll tell you what the dream means. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. And 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole." Yikes. I was so hungry when I read this that I immediately thought about a shish kebab. "And the birds will come and peck away at your flesh." Pharaoh's birthday did come 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff, and he summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials. And guess what? He restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. The very next verse is the next chapter, and we realize that for 2 full years, they forgot about Joseph. But today, I want to talk to you about the power of the jaw. Last week was catch it by the jaw, the words of the enemy. Now I want to talk about the power of your jaw, one of the most easily sidestep subjects relative to how frequently it is mentioned throughout Scripture. It is the subject of the mouth and your speech. Words like tongue and words and speak and mouth. And my favorite, silence, are mentioned about 3,500 times in Scripture. I think we get a fairly good amount of teaching on what we look at and the things we hear and the places we go and the deeds that we do and the feelings that we have and on love and faith and forgiveness. But when it comes to the power of the jaw, the tongue, James says, is a little thing that sets stuff on fire. And one of my guilty pleasures in life, I'll just be transparent with you, is I like to burn brush piles of cedar. And when I'm in the mood for it, it's hard to talk myself out of it, even when conditions are not so favorable. It makes me feel accomplished. And I love seeing cedar go up in smoke. And this is where my story begins. A few years back, out on that little place where we grew up, out in Johnson City, a little 100 acres out there. Walked out there one day. This is after I had moved out, but I was already married at this point. But I got in there on the place one day, and I figured, I had seen this brush pile long enough. And I thought, today's a good day to burn that thing. And so I kind of stepped back and looked, and conditions were not ideal. But the burn ban had recently been lifted, and so I kind of stepped back and pondered the situation and thought, I'm going to burn this pile today. And now this pile's in the middle of a pasture, and weeds had grown up around the edges, and I thought, well, if I could find myself a weed eater, and if I could get that thing started, that would be the confirmation I needed that the Lord wanted me to burn this pile. And sure enough, I found me a weed eater, and I got that thing started, and I went to cutting them weeds, and once I got that weed eater started, there was no turning back. And sure enough, I lit that pile, and it got big, and it got hot quick. And mind you, I'm just talking about a little thing that can grow into big intensity. And the way I started it, all I did was I took a little stick, and I dipped it down in my little diesel can, and then I lit that thing up and threw it on the pile, and away it went. And I was prepared for maybe a little bit of hot spots around in that grass, and so I had a couple buckets down there with me, and I had a square-headed shovel, and I'm watching. I didn't leave it. And, a little spot started burning over there, so I went and poured some water on it, scratched the dirt a little bit, and sit back, and I'm watching a little bit more. Here's another spot that lights up on the other side, and as I'm putting that out, another one popped up. I go over here. While I'm still trying to put this one out, another one popped up over here. And now a couple more popped up while I was still trying to get this one out, and then I'm starting to scold myself. Not happy with myself. And at some point, I think tunnel vision started to kind of come in. My heartbeat went from a cool 60 BPM to about 160. And the details are a little sketchy from that point on, but I started hustling. Now, this fire is in view of our little house up there where my mom is. And the next thing I know, here comes my mom with a couple of wet towels. And she hands me one, and we start slapping the ground with it. And I'm telling you, every time we would swipe that ground with that wet towel, a section of about 3 foot of flames would go out, and we got a handle on that fire in a matter of minutes. Go, Mom. Mom, are you in here? Mom, you remember that? I mess with you so much, I thought today I'll just celebrate you and tell everyone how cool you are. But you taught me a valuable lesson. She had probably learned it from her grandfather. Back in the day, they used to take wet burlap sacks, and that's how they put out the fires back then. So that was the same concept, and she passed it on to me. I don't know why it took so long for me to get it. I was like 25 or 30 or something. And so, but I was grateful that she taught me how to put out fires. And just like in the physical, how to put out fires, she taught us kids, me and my sisters, how to prevent fires with this little thing called the mouth. And she would teach us, Megan, Adrian, am I right about it? She would teach us, like, it don't matter if they lie on you, keep it shut. It don't matter if they mischaracterize you, you're going to be okay. It don't matter if they slander you, you are going to be okay. People can lie on you. They can make up stuff about you. People can say all types of things about you, and it really doesn't matter. Now, your silence in the face of this type of adversity is a strength that not many men have. But can I let you know a little secret? Even though you may have been taught this at an early age, it is impossible for you to exercise this type of restraint if your heart is not in the right posture. In other words, your mouth is connected to your heart. And out of what comes here, comes out here. Your mouth is connected here. In other words, your mouth is a barometer of what is in here. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What's in here eventually comes out. And if you've ever been guilty, maybe repeatedly, if you could confess it or admit it, that you've lied more than once, or you've torn down others, or you've spread gossip or been party to it. Maybe some backbiting or cursing or coarse jokes, and maybe you've taken the Lord's name in vain. Or maybe you've bearing false witness, or maybe you've done a little manipulating with this mouth. Maybe you've remained silent when you should have spoken up, and maybe you spoke up when you were supposed to remain quiet on something. Luke 6 says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. That is to say, the mouth speaks what is stored in the heart. But perhaps that's not you. Maybe you are so locked in to the rhythm and the cadence of God's heart that you speak words of life and truth and blessing and favor and encouragement, and you can't help yourself but to speak goodness. And every time you are presented with an opportunity to jump down somebody's throat, you can't help yourself and you just bless them. Come on. Maybe out of that rapture-ready mouth, you begin to speak faith that unites. You're like, I don't know who that is, but I want to be that. Maybe out of your mouth comes healing. Words of building up. Words of appreciation. Or maybe you have found yourself in another category where you've got a rapture-ready mouth on Monday, but a potty mouth come Thursday. And out of the same mouth, you got blessing coming out and cursing. I'm not in the right house. Could the same mouth speak blessings to your neighbor while dealing death blows to your spouse? I knew y'all weren't going to talk to me. You may have to turn me up, Andrew. And James says, and so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely this is not right. I've got a few things, a few reasons why you need to watch your. All right, y'all ready? I got three things. Number one, your mouth is tied to eternity. Tell your neighbor your mouth is tied to eternity. Matthew said, I tell you, you must give an account on Judgment Day for every idle word you speak. Matthew kept on recording the words of Jesus when he said this, the words you say will either acquit you or condemn you. Your mouth is tied to eternity. Number two, you can change how you think by how you speak. We often focus on the reverse order of that. But I just want you to know that if you are having trouble buying in here, I want you to begin to acknowledge it right here. And that's what I was trying to get us to do during worship. What I felt is that we needed to change the atmosphere by changing what we're saying, so that when we speak it, we see it up here. And if we can see it up here, we can seize it right here. I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. I could. 2 words. I could. Then I want you to scratch that out. And underneath that, I want you to write, I might. You know what? I might. Now, I want you to scratch that, and I want you to write, I can. But hold on. I want you to scratch that too. And under that, I want you to say, I will. I want you to say it, because the way you say it will help the way you think it. Rhonda, when you and I were going through the toughest battle in our lives, I knew that the words we spoke to each other would be the determining factor whether we were going to succeed or fail in this crossroad in which we were at. I said, Rhonda, you've got to say it. I can't. I don't believe. I said, you've got to say it. Come on, girl. You can do this. And she said it without believing it. But when she said it, she began to believe it. And God began to swirl in that room in the middle of the night. And God began to give us strength to get through that battle-tested moment, the greatest test we've ever been through. I could? No. I might? No. I can? No. But I will. I will. Everybody say, I will. Number 3, you have the ability to make them or break them by the way you speak. Whew. That hit me. I thought of 2 things. One thing was when you and I were in a meeting with Katie. And Katie was sitting there, and we were talking about our children and our Sunday school. And what she said began to overtake her, because she felt the weight of determining the course of our children. And she was feeling the weight of, I will. And emotion started hitting. You remember that? Katie, do you remember that? And I think we all had kind of this moment. And the other thing that popped into my head is all the countless times that I have looked in people's faces who were confronted with, I can't do this. Now, as a pastor or a leader, it's difficult sometimes to keep it together. But you've got to. And you've got to be strong. And in the face of adversity, you've got to dig in your heels. And you've got to say, look, I know you feel that you can't, but you will. You will. You can do this, and you will. I want to hear you say it. I want to hear you say it. Come on. Say it. And you begin to see the weight lift off of them. It's the power of words. Truly, the power of the tongue is something we cannot fully grasp. The way that you speak to your children, parents, has the ability to make them or break them. The words you speak about your neighbor, the words you speak to them will determine their course, and the words you speak about them will determine your course. let me tell you what I mean. A troublemaker plants seeds of strife, and gossip separates the closest of friends. It is not lawful for a man to plant seeds of strife and life. You either have it or you don't. You've got to speak words that bring value to others, because when you do, they will bring value to you. James 1:26 says, if any one of you thinks that he is religious but does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Man, that word religion, your religion is useless, that word really means worship. It means outwardly worshiping. That it's very close to the word ceremony. And all your ceremony is useless if we cannot control our tongue. Well, Jerod, what are you talking about? Can we put a pie chart up? Like, you talking 50%? Because half the time I'm speaking blessing. It's that other half. I get it. You're looking at a man right here, a human. And sometimes I feel like the son of Jesus Christ, and other times I feel like the son of Bobby Breakiron. I'm not calling him out. All I'm saying is the side of you that is human in flesh, when you work out of the default nature of your humanity, it doesn't matter if you're speaking life and blessing 90% of the time, but there's that 10% of you that cannot control yourself. Surely it is not right for blessing and cursing to come out of the same mouth. And the thing that really gets me, and it's the thing that really gets God, is the subtlety of the way we manipulate our speech. Because we are professionals with intellect that craft our words that sound good, but underneath them they have a hidden agenda. Either to expose you or unknowingly to divide us. Because again, there are two tiers of justice where I'm judging you by your actions, but I'm only judging me by my intentions. And I get away with a lot more than you do, and I never take accountability, and therefore it gives me the right to gossip about you. The subtlety of gossip is that it may not always be intended maliciously, but it always, almost always, will harm reputations. Can I tell you why you should stay away from gossipers? Revelatory. You ready? Because one who gossips with you gossips of you. A gossip, Proverbs 20 says, goes around telling secrets. Don't hang around the chatterers. I had an old aunt named Aunt Chatty. Aunt Chatty. Everybody's got a little bit of Aunt Chatty in you, where you just talk a little too much about other people's business because it feels good. Oh, Aunt Chatty, get away. I love you, Aunt Chatty, but get away. Aunt Chatty. Do you know why you shouldn't hang around with chatterers? Proverbs 25:10 says, others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never regain your good reputation. Did everybody get that? Okay, all right. Let's keep going. Is this good, or should we go straight to communion? Okay, it's good. Even though you know this in your heart, you find it difficult to do, right? Yes, because we're drawn to the drama. Give me the drama. All right. Why is this difficult? Proverbs 18:8. Because rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep in one's heart. Whew. Man, that tastes good. I can't help myself, but I got to tell my confidant what you just told me. And you know when somebody goes to you and they say, hey, this is between you and I, you get excited, right? Hey, keep this between us. You're like, yes, go ahead, And then what happened? You're like, well, I'll rationalize that because everybody's got a confidant, and I'll just tell them. Because dainty morsels, don't underestimate in these situations the power of silence. Do you know that your Lord was driven like a lamb to the slaughter and opened not his mouth? Give me some of that. I can follow some of that. Mischaracterize him, misjudge him, lie on him, slander. I will follow a man into battle that can show me some of that all day long. There's two things I cannot stand in life, and I'm just meddling here. Probably should keep my mouth trap shut. I cannot stand a lazy man, and I cannot stand a gossipy woman. Don't even clap for that. We need to get a greater sense of discipline in our minds and hearts and know that we are one family and the enemy is sly in trying to divide the best of friends. I'm not trying to call anything out. I have no idea of anybody's business in here. I'm just letting you know the power of the jaw. And sometimes the power to speak is less than what is required to keep it shut. Don't underestimate the power of silence. Fire goes out without wood, and so do quarrels disappear when gossip stops. You wonder why quarrels always following you, and you have no idea. Quit feeding the fire. David asked this question in Psalms. He said, who may enter into the house of worship with me? And he gave about 15 parameters. And one of those, he said in verse 3, those who refuse to gossip or harm their neighbors or speak evil of their friends. You come on in. Come on. Joseph spoke. Gave 2 interpretations, 2 dreams, 1 mouth, 2 very consequential results. He spoke life to the cupbearer, and he spoke death to the baker out of the same mouth. How many's reading their Bible through this year? You're on your way. Oh my goodness, awesome. I saw something when I was reading it through, but remember when Jacob, he takes his family, Rachel included, and Rachel steals her daddy's Laban's idols, and they go on a journey and they're headed out, and Laban finally catches him about 3 days later, and Laban says, oh, by the way, I'm missing my household idols. One of y'all took them. Jacob said, look, quit going through my stuff. If you find that somebody took them, they'll pay with it with their life. Nobody took your household idols. And it's just a couple chapters later that along the way, Rachel dies. The power of your words. Jacob, don't say such foolish things. Even when you are sure, you still don't know. When everything looks like this is the result, be careful. When you have reached a verdict, be careful. A simple yes or a simple no will do. But Joseph shows us the power of his words when he says, cupbearer, you're going to be restored. Chief baker, you're going to be condemned. And it's the power of this tongue that shows us death, life, death, life, death, life. Here's what I want to get across to you today. Because out of your mouth, I'm going to do something. I'm going to allow you to speak both death and life out of your mouth. I'm going to grant you that. I'm going to grant you the ability to speak life over the things that God has called you to, and I'm going to allow you to speak death on the things that hold you back. Out of this mouth, I'm going to proclaim life to what you are saying. But what the enemy is saying and these fleshly desires, I'm putting it to death. I'm condemning what you are saying about me. Get this down in your heart. Because if you can get the power of life and death right here, you can begin to speak those things that need to be raised up, and you can begin to address those things that need to die by speaking it. Even if you don't have it right here, speak it. Your words are tied to eternity. Speak it. If you will confess with your mouth, you shall be saved. Speak it. Speak it. Everybody say, speak it. Speak it. Speak life. Speak life to the dreams that God has put in you. Could we stand in the house? Speak life. Speak life to what God has put down in your heart. Speak life. Speak life, oh Lord. God and Lord, we speak death to the things that are of our spirit, the impulses, the quick desires, the quick responses, the things that appeal to my flesh. God, we speak death over those things. Somebody needs to speak them right now. Joseph said this on the way out. He said, when it goes well for you, please remember me. Right? Joseph, being a type of Jesus, both started their public ministry at 30 years old. Joseph and Jesus both rejected by their own brethren. Joseph hides his identity just like Jesus hid and concealed his identity. Joseph thrown down in the pit to die. Jesus thrown down in the pit to die. Joseph had every nation coming to him and bowed before him because they were hungry and thirsty. And Jesus, every knee bows and every tongue confesses. They come to him. Why? Because they're hungry. Joseph, a type and a shadow of Jesus Christ. Joseph said, remember me when it goes well for you. I want to remind you today that there are some things that the Lord has brought you out of. And you said, Lord, if you will just get me out of this situation, if you will just restore me, Adam, Jesus, if you will just bring me back up out of this pit and this prison. And the power of life was spoken. And Jesus is saying, just please remember me when it goes well for you.